Hi, everybody. Welcome back to House Polished. Today, we're here to discuss last night's episode, which was Eastwatch. I thought it was amazing, but we'll get into that in a minute. I'm here with the lovely Queen Clare C. and Catherine. We're going to talk about last night's episode. So I'll go to Queen Clare C first. and let us know what she thought of the episode and her polish.
I'd forgotten about that. Let's start with the polish. This is, again, you won't be able to see the name on the camera, but this is ILNP Kings and Queens. And really, I'm just choosing, I seem to be choosing the polishes based on the name rather than the type of polish. But I thought there was a lot of storylines about queens this episode, and also Jon announcing that he was king in the north, and also if Cersei had a way, then potentially, you know, she's carrying a new king, potentially. Yeah. So kings and queens is what I reach for in terms of my polish choice for this week, for this episode, and I really liked it. I thought it was, I think I watched it a couple of times, like back to back, and then I watched it again today. I made some notes, and I think this was an episode where I think Catherine is going to like this, because there's a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue, the conversations in rooms, definitely this episode. Quite a lot of setting up for things that are going to be happening in the last two episodes, but it wasn't, I thought we were going to have a bit of a lull after the battle, the field of fire. But it didn't seem to do that. It seemed to sort of, you know, we're not having any filler episodes, which is great. But yeah, I liked it. I thought there was quite a bit of mirroring in this episode, but we can talk about that as we go through some of the examples. But I would say this is a solid 9 out of 10 for me, definitely.
What about you, Catherine? How did you feel?
Yeah, Claire's right. I loved this episode, and the polish I picked is by Celestial, and it's one word, Dracarys. And I think that word, this episode, is going to come back and haunt Dany. Obviously that's Game of Thrones polish as well. It's not just somebody decided to call that polish Dracarys. I think this episode, for me, I would give it an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. And I would dock it for the miraculous recovery of Jaime at the beginning. Other than that, it would be an amazing episode for me. I thought that there was lots of themes in this, like forgiveness, the theme of children, and also just the difference between people who take action and people who have information. I felt like that was a big theme throughout this episode. So there was a lot in it. I thought there was a lot to digest in it, a lot of toing and froing, and massive, like speedy pacing throughout in terms of how fast time goes in this episode. So yeah, but that's it. That's me done for now.
Okay, so for my polish, I also picked a Game of Thrones polish. I picked Cadillac or Nothing Burns Like the Cold, because that last scene where they go north of the wall, blistering cold. I've been through winters like that. I know how cold they are. So yeah, this is what I picked for this week for this polish. I agree with you guys. I'm giving it about an 8.5 too. It was very, very good, but there was just a couple of things. Again, Jaime and Bronn's miraculous recovery. Like there was no like it just you know, oh, we're out of the water and we're alive. Yeah, it's not how are, you know, that's not real life. And the pacing was just a little bit too much for me too. Anyway, we're gonna get right on into it. The first scene with the Lannister army is what we're gonna talk about first. What do you have to say about that one, Claire?
Well, sorry about that distraction there. I thought it was one of Marwyn's toys, and I thought he was very squeaky, and I thought he brought a frog in, and it just scared me because I had a cat once that brought a frog in, and it was just the noise that it was making, but it's not, it's a toy. So apologies for the distraction and me going like that, thinking that there's a frog somewhere. Because we've got the back door open and it's tipping down here. It's that humid, rainy weather that's just horrible. Okay, the battle aftermath. I thought that, just going back to what you were saying about Bronn and Jaime, that's kind of the definition of plot armor, isn't it? That's what he was wearing, literally. I thought that you just have to skip over that and kind of suspend your disbelief that, you know, suddenly that happened. Like Bronn suddenly turned into Aquaman and had like superpowers and was able to drag Jaime out of the water. But I thought that in the middle of the devastation, Tyrion walking through the battleground, it's just the sight of all that ash, and which, you know, is like human remains. Yeah, it just awful. But it reminded me of snow. Just the look of it reminded me of snow. I think that I can't get my head around Dany at all and her motivations. I know she's young, and I know that she's had inconsistency in terms of her counsel and advisors, but she seems to be kind of slap bang in the middle of this breaker of chains, break the wheel, things are going to be different to how they were before, which means that she's kind of listening a little bit to Jon's advice. Hi, Brianna. Hi. And but she's also behaving like a tyrant, like a mad queen, like, you know, the daughter of the Mad King. So I can't quite get a handle on what, and it's probably because she needs better counsel. I think Tyrion's just losing the plot. I think he doesn't really quite know what to do anymore. And it just feels like nobody's really in charge or knows what they're doing in that camp, in the whole sort of Dragonstone camp. Interestingly, we didn't see Missandei at all. I'm just keeping an eye on that girl because I don't trust her, but we didn't see her at all. And we also didn't see Theon. Don't know what's happened to Theon. I thought he would have been desperate to go up to the north and kind of redeem himself in the, you know, the band of heroes that were formed. I thought that there was, I'll just mention now, I think there was quite a lot of mirroring this episode between scenes that we get in this episode and historic things that we know that have happened in the past with the Starks and the Targaryens. So the Tarleys, so son and father and son burned to death in their armor. That's mirroring Ned's father and brother. Dany behaving like a conqueror kind of mirrors and demanding, you know, I mean, you could argue that she didn't really have much of a choice, but she didn't really give anybody much of a choice. It was, you know, you accept me as the queen or you're going to die. And that was very kind of reminiscent of Aegon the Conqueror, and also the more obvious one, which was Gendry and Jon later on, kind of mirrored that relationship between Ned and Robert, which is, you know, clearly what they were trying to go for. But I thought that was, there was a lot of like historic mirroring that included Marwyn, stop it, that included Targaryen and Stark history. Yeah, but I was, I don't know what, I mean, it just, the fact that Tyrion said, I mean, maybe it was just in his shock and desperation, they can take the black, they can take the black. And it's like, but they can't, because she can't command them to do anything if they don't accept her as queen. So as much as that, I mean, it was kind of, they basically committed suicide, and that was it for the. Okay, a couple of times in this episode, it was mentioned that the Tarleys line had been wiped out completely. That's it, their house gone totally. But there's still Sam.
He's been disowned.
I know that he's been disowned. Somebody in the background saying he's been disowned. I know he has, but he's still Tarley by name. So it's not the house completely decimated. But yeah, I think that's all I've got to say there is I can't get a grip on Dany. Does she want to do things differently, or is she just playing the Targaryen tyrant? And Tyrion seems quite ineffectual, really, at this stage. But I don't know whether that's just because he's thinking, shit, I've chosen the wrong side. I don't know how to get out of this one. Yeah, but he seems quite shocked with how she's behaving. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't. That was all I got really for this bit. Drogon looked impressive, obviously. Yeah, huge. What do you say, Catherine?
So I'm going to be very, very quick on this. I'll try. I made lots of notes. First of all, the Jamie thing, because I was saying to Florrie that I might have an explanation. I was watching What the Flick today, their review of it, and they mentioned that in the original leaked script for this episode, there was a scene where there was lots of Lannisters struggling in the water, and they all tried to take their armor off, and it made them drown. And because Jamie doesn't take his armor off, he survives. So they seem to have cut that scene, or at least cut it out of the script that we got last night, last night. So that might be an explanation. But again, it's one of those things, as Florrie says, it didn't bug her. I don't think it's going to bug everybody. The episode itself was very, very strong. I think the most important thing about that scene was what Bronn says to Jamie, that what was he doing, riding towards the dragon like that? And Jamie, I think, is quite suicidal at that point, and I'll come back to that later with the Tyrion Jamie scene. But he says to Bronn says to Jamie that he nobody gets to kill him except him. So Bronn is the only one who gets to kill Jamie. And I just wondered, is that foreshadowing? Because Cersei later on asks Jamie if he's going to kill Bronn for his treachery in arranging the meeting with Tyrion. And he says, so I wondered, is he going to have to kill Jamie later? Perhaps when Jamie has to kill a pregnant Cersei, will that kind of trigger Bronn? Maybe, perhaps, because we know there's something with Bronn and his past. We don't know what it is, but there's something weird about Bronn and his past. So that might trigger him, or maybe he'll have to help Jamie end his life, because Jamie being one-handed, that might be difficult. So maybe Bronn will help him end his life later on. And the other thing with this scene that I really liked was Tyrion walking through the battlefield. And it takes a couple of minutes to realize that the music being played is a very, very slow version of the Rains of Castamere. And it kind of, it's almost this elegiac, is that the word? Like an elegy. Because it made me think, well, does Tyrion now feel like he's his father, except he's the one doing it to the Lannisters? He's wiping out the Lannisters potentially. And perhaps maybe he feels a bit like Cersei as well. There's definitely a problem here, and I liked that you brought up Missandei, because she is missing, but there's definitely a lot of building towards Tyrion potentially being the one that betrays Dany for love as well, for the love of Jamie, I think. So I think that could go either way. Dany, I think, is going to get a lot of criticism in this scene, but I think this scene, I don't know what she could have done differently here. I think Tarly, I find Tarly's reasoning a bit odd, considering he fought for her father in the rebellion. So I don't really understand his reasoning here about her being a foreign invader. Is it because she has the Dothraki with her and the Unsullied, which makes me wonder, is this setting us up for people not being able to accept Jon later on, because Jon is the wildlings behind him? So I'm not sure about that, what his reasoning is there.
Can I just say, Catherine, I think that it's probably because of the dragon. I know that he served her father, but dragons weren't in existence. Just experiencing that devastation that she just rained on them in the battle, that's possibly what's made him think, savages, we've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah, so and we do have Jon saying that later on, that they're beasts, but we also have a thing where, just removing the beast element from the dragons, they're also a representation, a mass representation of magic, and the re-entering of magic into the world, which the Maesters kind of jeer. So you're right, there's probably that has a lot to do with it. But what I did like about this scene, and we see it throughout, and just when you brought up the mirroring thing as well, we see both sides of every argument throughout this. Even Cersei. Now Cersei, we've always seen Cersei is doing everything because she's a mother. Now she's pregnant again, so she's going to be doing everything because she's a mother. So yeah, I think we're seeing both sides throughout. So context really does matter. It really matters, because the word that's going to get out is that Dany is like her father, because Dany has also now burnt a father and son alive, just like her father did with the Starks, although she didn't burn Brandon, right? But is that everything? Oh yeah, just that Tarly kind of dooms himself when he says that she can't send him to the wall because only his queen can do that. And I kind of did like that Dany, in this scene, depending on your take on her, she does do exactly what Ned and exactly what Rob and exactly what Jon did. They made a threat against somebody who wasn't loyal, and they fulfilled it with, like, you know, killing that person, executing that person. So I think there's an argument in favor of Dany here, but Tyrion isn't seeing it. I think this is one of the brilliant things about Game of Thrones. We don't have a very black and white good versus evil here. It's a very complicated situation. And remember, Tarly was an asshole to his son. We shouldn't be feeling sorry for him, but we do in that scene. If anything, he gets a really quick death. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about that scene. Lisa, what did you think of it?
I think part of Tyrion's problem in this scene is he feels guilty with the death of all the Lannister soldiers. So he's seeing all this devastation. He's trying to reason with Dany not to kill any more people, but she's just not listening to him. So I think that's part of Tyrion's issue here, is that he feels guilty towards what's happened with all of his men, really, because he is still a Lannister. The only other thing that I wanted to touch on really was and now that Sam is the only Tarly left, is that going to affect his decision when he finally finds out to go north? I mean, is he going to still go north, or is he going to go back to his home, or is he still going to go north? I personally think he's still going to go north, but I don't know if it's going to affect his decision. Do you guys want to move into the next scene, which was King's Landing? Claire, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll just go through, because there's, Catherine was saying before, there's a lot of kind of crossover. We've got a couple of scenes with Jaime and Cersei, but we've also got, later on in King's Landing, we've got Davos turning up with Tyrion, and they go on their mission. Do
you guys mind if we deal with Gendry separately, and Tyrion and Jaime? Maybe just do Jaime and Cersei now, because that would probably make more sense. Because otherwise, it's hard to do all the crisscross. Yes. If that's okay.
Yeah, it was very choppy this episode, so if you want, that's fine.
Sure. There's just a couple of things really. I didn't get a great deal from Jaime and Cersei's interaction, apart from she's just insane, and so heartless. I mean, the fact that, and the shock on Jamie's face with the questions she was asking, how many men are dead, how many, you know, just not how are you, oh my God, what was it like to see a dragon? Just not, you know, it just harsh. I thought her acting was phenomenal, though, with that very small kind of scene within a scene, specifically about Joffrey, and it just solidified it for me that Cersei's downfall, I think, what will continue to trip her up is that her motivation, she can only see, she's in like a bubble, she can only see what affects her and her what is important to her at the time. And I don't even think Jamie's that important to her. It depends on what he can give her at the time. And just the fact that she thinks she's clever, but she just doesn't seem to be able to put herself in other people's position to see. It was, I mean, Jamie had to really spell it out. How would you feel if you were Olenna? Who would you want your granddaughter to marry? And only at that point did it suddenly become clear to her. And it's like she shows absolutely no, I wouldn't even call it empathy, but just no insight whatsoever into what other people's motivations might be. And that's ultimately only going to be her downfall. She thinks she's clever, but there's a layer of clever that just isn't there at all with Cersei. But her acting, in terms of that realization on her face of, oh my God, that really is the truth, and just, yeah, just the scene that was the first scene. The scene later on, when Jamie comes back into her quarters to tell her that he's just met with Tyrion, and she just didn't seem surprised at all. Well, of course she wouldn't, because she already knew that was taking place. And again, he just seems really shocked by her reactions. But and then she points out that she's pregnant. Do we think she's really pregnant, or is she just saying this to try and keep him on side, guessing that he's wavering maybe? I mean, we did say at the very beginning of the series, when Cersei was kind of screaming and shouting about legacy and Lannister legacy, that there are no children, so there is really no legacy. What, she's 40 now, so she'll be lucky if there's another 30 years of this legacy. That's if everything goes her way. So I don't know if she really is pregnant, but again, why, I don't know. I can't make my mind up about that. But that's really all I got on the interaction with Jamie and Cersei.
Sorry, I was in the chat. I just want to say hi to MP and Florrie and Marco and Margaret. Thanks a million for coming, guys. I hope I named everybody. I think I did. Yeah, the Jamie Cersei thing, I actually got more out of the first scene than the second scene. And you'll see why in a second. She talks about how they'll just hire mercenaries and pay them as a well-paid, you know, as long as the soldiers are well paid, they'll fight. Now Cersei's dead wrong about this. Dany doesn't need to pay the soldiers that she has with her. Jon doesn't need to pay the soldiers he has with him. So that's really, really key. Also, Bronn, it opens with Bronn saying, it doesn't matter what I get paid, really, I'm not sticking around for dragons. So that's a big, I think that's a big red flag there with Cersei. However, I will kind of disagree with you in a way, Claire. I don't think she's as stupid as we think in this episode. For one thing, I was going to mention this earlier or later, but I'll mention it now. Davos says to Tormund when they arrive at Eastwatch that Jon hasn't been listening to him as Hand. He hasn't been listening. He hasn't been doing a good job at that of late. Tyrion isn't really getting listened to as Hand. There's an argument for Littlefinger whether he's kind of Sansa's hand or not. We'll talk about that when we get to it. So really the only person that has a really good working relationship with their hand, a very personal relationship with their hand, is Cersei, and it seems to be working so far for her. But again, I totally agree. She's too stupid to kind of keep that going. However, she's one of the few characters in the show that is really marrying taking action and having information and going forward with both of those. John is really a man of action. Danny is a woman of action. Littlefinger is more about the information. Varys is more about information. The Maesters are more about information. So she's the only one that's really working those both angles at the moment. But Jamie doesn't really realize that. I think that Cersei is very pissed off that Olenna had the last word, and Cersei completely underestimated everybody else's ability to tolerate Joffrey and everybody's ability to see through his evil ways and just accept him as king. And I kind of feel that there's a lot of parallels, like you're saying, a lot of mirroring between Cersei and Dany, and I think Dany does the same with her dragons. She completely underestimates people's ability to tolerate them, and like what you were saying, Claire, about the Tarleys, how that was probably a key issue in Randall Tarley not bending the knee to Dany. I don't think Cersei is ever going to listen to Jamie again, and I think she's up to something, and something really nasty, and I'm really worried about that. I'll come back to that in a second. In that first scene, Tywin, they reference Tywin, and she says, remember what father always says, and Jamie says, don't concern yourself with the opinions of the sheep. So just that sheep reference again, you know, I like that sheep reference. And it's not just because I'm Irish. Well, maybe it is. Okay, so there's also the Jamie Cersei scene, and Jamie arrives in the room, and Qyburn is there, and he says, what's he doing here? And she says, he's my hand, you idiot. Like, you're not the one that she goes to anymore. Like, wake up. Why can't he wake up? And I'm kind of wondering where Euron is in all of this. So when she announces that she's pregnant to Jamie, and he says, who will you say the father is? She says that she's going to say it's Jamie. But I kind of wonder, are the people going to really accept that? Just like, will they accept Dany's dragons? Are they really going to accept Cersei and Jamie Lannister's baby? I don't know. She also says, you know, are you going to punish Bronn? I feel that's going to be a test for Jamie in the maybe next week. Is he going to punish Bronn? I think she might test Jamie's loyalty by asking him to kill Bronn. She also says that we have to fight like father would have. So that made me wonder, are we going to get like a red wedding-esque move from Cersei? There's something going on. I'm really worried about that. Or is she going to take an opportunistic marriage? They're the two moves that Tywin took. So will that mean she's going to offer her hand to Euron? Maybe, you know, cover up the pregnancy that way. Although time is moving so fast, we're going to need to see a serious baby bump next week. And maybe even she'll offer something to Jon. Who knows? And then I have this mad kind of thought that if she is pregnant, I think she is pregnant, actually. Marco asked in the chat, I kind of do think she is pregnant. There's just too many, for me, there's just too many red flags all over this episode. I think she is pregnant. Whether she can carry that child to full term or not is another thing. But I kind of feel that if Jamie kills her, she may be just about to have the baby, or it'll somehow send her into labor or something. And I think that Tyrion will end up taking that child and raising that child. There was already a lot of foreshadowing with Tyrion's relationship with Myrcella and Tommen very, very early on, even in the pilot, how good he was with the kids compared to Jamie even. So I think if she does have that child, Tyrion might raise it, but there's every chance she could lose that child. She's drinking a lot. And she's in her 40s in the show, which is totally possible to have kids in your 40s, but she's a lot older in the show than she is in the book, so all that drinking is not going to help. But yeah, that's it. Sorry for going on so long.
Being pregnant in your 40s though is a lot more high risk than when you're in your 20s. So, you know, the part of the scene where Jaime and Cersei are talking about the meeting with Tyrion, and if he's gonna punish Bronn for betraying him. I think Cersei has got something going on in the back of her head there. Might be a little bit of tin foil, as to steal your saying there, Catherine. I think that she's gonna say, okay, bring this white down and show me this white, and then we'll send our men up north to fight. But she won't send them up north, and she'll just let the whites kill as many of the people who are up north as possible, to try and kill as many of her enemies without actually having to do anything. That's my theory as to what's going to happen here. Possibly, I don't know. I did love the Jaime and Tyrion scene because I loved them together. I love their chemistry together, and I've missed seeing them on screen. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I know we want to keep this as short as possible tonight. So next scene, we want to talk about Gendry.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize we were talking about Tyrion and Jaime. Sorry, I skipped Tyrion and Jaime. This episode just had me all over the place. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Just with Tyrion and Jaime, I thought it was very clever the way Bronn brings Jaime down to meet Tyrion, on the pretense that they're going to be sparring, because he knows that Jaime will kill Tyrion. And I just wonder how much communication they've been having, if any. Maybe not that much, because I'm sure, I don't know. It's just a bit weird. I don't know how how Tyrion managed to communicate with Bronn. And I'm just wondering where his allegiance really is with Bronn. I kind of feel it's with Tyrion. I also think when Tyrion said to Jaime, "Do you think I wanted to be born this way?" And Jaime cuts him off completely. I think that's the question Jaime has been asking himself for the past few episodes, and that's one of the reasons why he's feeling so suicidal and depressed. He doesn't want to be in love with Cersei anymore. He just can't help it anymore. And I feel he just feels as bad as Tyrion does right now. And yeah, just very deliberate wording there on Tyrion's part. Sorry, Lisa.
No worries. I was just trying to go through my notes as quickly as possible. So do you want it to move on to Gendry next? I know there's lots to talk about there. What did you think there, Claire? You got your mic.
You hear me okay? I was just saying I absolutely love that scene, and it just reminded me of how long this series has been on TV, because everyone who's coming back has really aged up quite a bit. And you know, Gendry had wrinkles and everything. And I did like the nod to fan service on I Thought You Were Still Rowing. I just thought it was incredible that I've just put Gendry was born ready. And that's, you know, right, yeah, come on, ready, don't need to explain. I thought that was brilliant. And of course he is the last Baratheon, so House Baratheon, which we thought was destroyed with Shireen, may not be. So that's another, and again, the whole going back to the polish that I chose, kings and queens, you know, there's lots of potential kings and queens lurking around. I thought it was great. I thought his warhammer was fabulous. I thought the way that he bashed those two guards on the beach was fabulous. Just the whole, you know, I'm not trained, but I'm a fighter and I'm ready to go. And I'd love him to bump into Arya again. There's a few questions that I've got with this that just kind of overlap, but yeah, I'll come to that when we talk about Dragonstone. But yeah, I just thought it was brilliant. It was amazing. I think going back to what Catherine was saying about Tyrion and Bronn, I think he probably just walked into a brothel within 10 minutes of arriving in Flea Bottom and just would have bumped into Bronn quite easily. There's probably regular haunts that he knows that he'll be able to find him. But again, just going back to, because I didn't mention the Jamie and Tyrion scene. The acting was great. You can see that there's a real bond between Jamie and Tyrion, and that may be the thing that ultimately unravels everything for Jamie when it comes to his story arc going forward. But I can't. This is something that I can't get out of my head. When he says, you know, we don't need, so Cersei won't bend the knee, fair enough, we don't need her to bend the knee straight away. And it's like, why do you, I can't remember who in the scene back at Dragonstone around the painted table whose idea it was to go and capture a white to prove to Cersei. But was it Tyrion's idea? Yeah. Again, why does anyone have to prove anything to Cersei? Like, what is there to gain from that at all? And I like what you were saying, Lisa, about she would use that to her advantage. You know, she's not going to say, oh great, let's have a truce and fight the real enemy. She's going to use that completely to her advantage. But yeah, I don't get the plan. I don't actually get the plan. I don't understand why they feel they have to capture. I thought if they were going to have to do that, it would be to prove to Dany, but Dany seems to be falling in line with, yeah, I'll believe anything that Jon says. So yeah, definitely. But yeah, I just, again, going back to Gendry, I thought that was a fantastic scene. And the fact that he was just still there in his shop, being a smith and being completely devastated that he was making, you know, steel for the Lannister forces. He seems to be very proud that Robert was his father. So I thought that was quite sweet. And yeah, I think I'll just say very quickly at the scene back at the beach. Again, Tyrion, what you did, he seems to be making some really ridiculous decisions. I thought that they spent a little bit too much time with those guards and the fermented fish and everything. I think that seemed to be a really, I don't know whether it was just me, but it seemed to be a really long scene, longer than it needed to be. But yeah, they were quickly in and out of King's Landing. They did what they needed to do. Cersei was aware of what was going on, and but they, it was still mission successful. So yeah. I like your t-shirt, Brianna. Is that a mermaid? Is it a sea? It looks like a sea dragon. I like it. I like the blue on your t-shirt.
I'm very jealous of her hair. Her hair is lovely.
It's Dory. She likes Finding Dory.
Oh, Finding Dory.
Okay, so we're talking about Gendry. I'm so excited Gendry's back. So excited. That was I texted you during the week. That was the bit that somebody on YouTube spoiled on me by putting it in their thumbnail. Please don't put spoilers in your thumbnails, people. Although it probably would have been, well, it wouldn't matter in the opening credits, but if you saw his name in the opening credits, actually the credits were amazing as well in this episode because they kind of panned across the wall, which I really liked. Okay, so yeah, I had written down a lot of what you said. I am totally on the Gendry is Cersei's first child with Robert. I'm on that train. He deliberately says to Davos as well, yeah, this is the safest place to be, right under the Queen's nose. And I've always liked that theory. They've brought it up in the show. I don't know if anything will ever come of it, but I've always liked that theory. And I'm totally on board with it. Even when I first read the books, that was something that kind of played out, that stuck out to me. His mother had yellow hair. Yeah, the Jon and Gendry thing, obviously the obvious irony there when they meet is that Gendry, is it Gendry or John says our fathers trusted each other, and that's going to be ironic for a lot of people because we're going to know that Robert actually killed John's father, Rhaegar. But actually, if you think about it even further, there's another level of irony in that Ned may not have trusted Rhaegar, but he kept his secret until his death. So there is a level of trust there, I guess, that Lyanna built between these two men. Whether anybody will ever know that or not, it remains to be seen. Yeah, it struck me when I was watching that scene as well with Gendry and Jon, which was a brilliant scene. That Gendry's father killed Jon and Gendry's half brother killed Ned. So I wonder how much does Gendry think about the fact that Joffrey was his half brother. I liked the way he was thinking a lot about how Robert is his father, and he's definitely got a lot of Robert in him. But yeah, and also he's definitely our action guy in this episode. And he says that to Davos when he says, I can't wait out this war. I really liked that, and he's definitely a man of action, probably better than Robert in a way, because it looks like he's not going to be the kind of person to sleep around, that he'll be very loyal to one person, maybe even that one person being Arya. Let's see, we don't know yet. And maybe he'll get that from his mother, Cersei, who's kind of semi-loyal to Jaime in terms of her love, or maybe not. But yeah, that's all I really took from the Gendry stuff. I really loved it, and I'm okay with the fermented crab. If it works, we're going to try it out here. Let's see.
I was so happy to see Gendry when he turned around. Like, I literally Gendry! I was so happy to see him. I was so happy. That was a really interesting point that you made there, Catherine, probably because you're a book reader, about Cersei being Gendry's mother. I had that just, whew, and yeah, that's really interesting. That makes me think a lot.
Yeah, she says it to Kat. Actually, when Bran is still in his coma, she says it to Kat that she had a beautiful brown-haired boy.
I remember that now.
Yeah, with Robert. So yeah,
I just assumed that kid passed away, or that's interesting. That makes me think about a lot of things. I really enjoyed the scene with Jon and Gendry too. I thought it was great. Marco's got a comment in the chat here. You a lot leaner, you a lot shorter. I thought that was hilarious. It was really that was my favorite part of that scene. I thought it was great. So I think if you guys are ready, we can move into Dragonstone. Talk about Jon and Drogon, because that was amazing too. What do you think, Claire?
I thought it was a great scene. I think that I like the fact that there was Jon took his emotions and the sound and just everything. It was great the way they did it. The way that he took his glove off instinctively to touch the dragon, which of course is fire made flesh, and I would imagine that if you touch a dragon, it's quite hot. But the fact that he touched the dragon, and I'm as you know, I'm a pet person. I've got Marwyn, but I've also got a couple of cats, and I've always been a cat person. And to me, Drogon was really displaying like kitten type of behaviors. Like this is going to sound really weird, but when a cat closes its eyes really slowly and kind of blinks really slowly, that's smiling at you. That's a cat's way of smiling at you. So when Drogon kind of closed his eye and opened it again slowly, it was like he was smiling at Jon, which I thought was just a really neat way of them interacting with each other. And it was like very visceral, kind of like smelling each other and like feeling touching each other. And the kind of little whimpers and things that Drogon made, especially when Dany was getting off. He kind of went as if to say, "Oh, I forgot you were here." I thought Danny's reaction was quite interesting. I don't know how many. I know there was when the dragons were a lot smaller. I know especially in the books when the dragons are a lot smaller and she's still over in Essos, there's a couple of characters like Brown Ben Plum who's able to interact with the dragons, and she's quite surprised that he's able to interact with them. And there's this thing about him saying that he's got a drop of the dragon in him, so that's why the dragons take to him. This is a book thing, but it's kind of reflected, I guess, if you go along with the you know, that Jon is a Targaryen. I thought it was great, and I just really liked it. It made me laugh when Jon said, "Yeah, gorgeous beast," because it just made me, with his northern accent, and it just made me think, that's what, when I do my nail polish videos, I say that all the time. Gorgeous. Oh, look at this colour, it's gorgeous. Oh, this polish is gorgeous. But yeah, so his accent made me laugh there, and it's just his description of the dragons. I know that Catherine doesn't like Daenerys referring to the dragons as her children, which she did quite proudly again. And what made me laugh was Jon's reaction of like, "You're a bit weird," which made me think of Catherine laughing at that. So yeah, I thought the interaction was great, and I thought that I don't know if it means that Jon's going to ride a dragon. I don't think it necessarily means that, but I think it means something. So yeah, but I thought it was I think it was shot very well, and I think the reactions of Drogon was great.
Sorry, I almost dug into the wine there before I unmuted. I'll save it. Yeah. By the way, I always say gorgeous as well, and my dad for years has been making fun of my mum and me for doing that. Oh, it's gorgeous, but we don't say it in a northern way. I actually liked when I loved this scene so much. This is the scene that I've been replaying throughout today. I replayed last year the Sansa Jon reunion scene. This has been like my favorite scene so far, Jon with the dragon. I just think I've been waiting for it so long, and to see it finally, it was, CGI is beautiful with the dragons. Also, we got a nod to Ghost earlier on, or later on in this episode, or earlier on, maybe it was, I think it was later on, with Sansa mentioning Ghost. So it was nice that Ghost hasn't been forgotten, although I wonder. I do think it is quite shocking for Dany that Jon instinctively takes off his glove and reaches out for Drogon. He's not afraid of him at all. And if any of you have watched the behind the scenes clips that Game of Thrones have released today, there is an interview with Kit Harington where he wanted to do that deliberately, because like when you approach a wild animal like a horse or something that doesn't know you, you kind of let them you can't be afraid in front of them, and you let them kind of sniff almost your bare hand, and they did that really beautifully. I thought it was amazing. I loved the contrast between this dragon and then the Stark furs. I thought that was amazing. It's like the coming together of the Starks and the Targaryens throughout this episode, and that was just a beautiful visual of that. And when he says to Dany, when she cringily says they're her children again, and he says they're magnificent beasts, and she says they're not beasts to me. Again, echoes of Cersei there. You know, Joffrey wasn't a beast to her, so is Drogon and the rest of the dragons kind of Dany's Joffrey in a way. And you know, I think Jon would be better with the dragons, and Tyrion would be better with the dragons, because they know the potential violence they have and the danger of the dragons. Dany doesn't, and it's scary the precise control she has over Drogon now, and that's why I picked my polish as well for Dracarys. She can just say Dracarys, and he can precisely hone in on like the Tarleys like that. That's scary. Now she can't do that for the other dragons, I assume, yet. And it makes me wonder that if something happened to Drogon, would Dany be necessarily able to ride any of the other dragons? I'm not so sure she would, because there is a bond there with dragons, and potentially if Drogon is killed, there is a potential for Tyrion and Jon to ride dragons. And yes, Tyrion can ride a dragon without necessarily being a Targ. There is precedent for that in the history of Westeros. So that was just one thing there. And just another thing, Dany picks up on Jon about his being stabbed in the heart, and Jon Jorah comes back before Jon can fully answer that, but she's not going to let that go. That's a big thing to Dany. What is that all about? So she's not letting that go. It's interesting that Tyrion and the others kind of ignored it, but Dany isn't going to let that go. I don't know, are we talking about Jorah now? Just the idea of forgiveness came back a lot with Dany this and Davos as well in this episode, and Cersei's lack of forgiveness or inability to forgive people. And the scene with Jorah is I loved that scene when he's coming back, and I feel really bad because I don't know if Jorah and Dany are going to see each other after this episode. I think it was just like a hi and goodbye, literally. So yeah, that's all I have for this. I suppose if you guys want to talk about Varys and Tyrion and all that, you can come back to me if you feel like it.
I really enjoyed the scene too. It's absolutely beautifully shot. Like you guys have said, the cinematography and the CGI was just all absolutely gorgeous, as we're all saying tonight. Usually I say stunning when I'm talking about a polish, but let's just go with gorgeous tonight. It was just absolutely beautiful. I don't know if Dany was shocked or kind of Jon was able to do this to Drogon. Like nobody else is really, she hasn't seen anybody else be able to do this to the dragon. So I don't know if it was shock or if it was awe, or I don't know, but she just seems so much in love. Like the tension between those two is just cut it with a knife. But yeah, that was my take from the scene. I was so happy to see Jorah come back too. Again, it was another one of those moments where it's like, Jorah! So excited to see him. So the other scenes that were at Dragonstone, we had at their little round table thing, Varys and about
Have we lost Lisa? Maybe.
Hello, Lisa.
I think she's gone. Claire, do you want to give your thoughts on Varys and Tyrion?
And Tyrion.
While she's trying to come back in.
Yeah, not a great deal really, apart from Stuart was saying that he said, "Is that actor from Northern Ireland?" I said, "Yeah, he is." And it's just the way he said doing about 3 times, and he did it. There was a slight Irish twang there to his accent, but yeah, the whole you need to make a listen, and I kind of think that Varys is giving some good advice to Tyrion there, because Tyrion does need to step up a little bit as Hand. She looks to him for advice. And I'm not sure he's given her the right advice. And I like Tyrion. Oh, Lisa, I hope you come back. But yeah, I've got no notes at all, apart from just that quote, "Make her listen." The bit before that, I just wanted to say about Jorah arriving, I thought was absolutely hilarious, because there's this, Jorah's been in the friend zone for so long. And he's been on such a journey to, get rid of the grayscale and come back to her. And there's this epic love story in his head. And he turns up and she stood there right next to Jon Snow. And you can tell, they're having this private conversation. He must have just thought, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I've come all this way to come back to you." And she genuinely seemed like she hugged him, and she was really like, really hugging him, and it was, you could just see the look on Jorah's face a couple of times in the episode where it was just like, I can't believe that while I was away, this is already started. But yeah, there was a real.
Plus John has his family sword to top it all off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, he's pretty much got everything that Jorah wants. So yeah, I did feel quite sorry for Jorah, and maybe that's why he decided to go. You know, I'll disappear up north. Maybe just to keep an eye on Jon or whatever. I don't know, but I just thought that was funny that he'd been through so much, and then there's Jon Snow stood right next to Khaleesi. Yeah, there's another couple of scenes in Dragonstone, which is when Jon receives the news of the Raven, and then Jon and Gendry in the caves. But I don't know if you want to go there yet, or
Well, just while we're on the Varys Tyrion thing, I did feel that I love the way Varys just started drinking. Like this is again, like there's the Varys potential to be the betrayer in Dany's. I'm always worried about people who we don't see on their own ever. We never see Varys on his own. So yeah, I'm a bit worried about Varys. And he says that when he was with Aerys, he constantly tried to convince himself that he was just the purveyor of information, that it wasn't him that was doing the bad things, that was the king. And again, that idea of information versus action coming up quite a lot. And I just wondered, did Bran know that Varys would read what he was writing? Was he very careful about what he put? Did he just put the need to know information in the scroll? Because Varys says that he already read it, and Tyrion knows that he already read it. And also with the small council thing, again, yeah, like you, I made a note of Theon's absence. Where the hell is he? And also when Dany easily lets Jon go north, which, by the way, I don't know why they have that plan either about getting a white. I don't know what Tyrion is thinking. In the books, they take the arm of the white that Jon, I don't know if they did that in the show, and sent it south, and it kind of melts. So I presume they're going to try and take someone alive down south, otherwise it won't work. And I kind of wondered, is that going to be one of the guys at Eastwatch that's gone with Jon? Will that be one of the, if someone is killed and whited, will they be the ones that are taken? Because that would be pretty gruesome. But yeah, in way back in season 2, Dany goes into the House of the Undying in Karth, and there is a scene where she walks into the throne room, and just as she's about to reach out for the Iron Throne, I watched it today. I don't have that good of a memory. It just there was something in it that made me think about it. There's this, she reaches out for the Iron Throne and she stops herself, and then walks to the side and goes through the wall and comes out the other side, north of the wall. And I just wonder, is this the beginning of Dany turning around, perhaps for Jon and perhaps for the good of everybody, but nobody will ever know, maybe, how instrumental she will be in stopping winter. And I feel like she will forego going for the Iron Throne and instead fight winter. And I wonder, is that the House of the Undying scene? It was just the scene today with the thing going up at Eastwatch. It just made me think of that scene. So yeah, that's all I have. I don't know if you want to go on and talk about. We've lost Lisa. Hopefully she'll be able to come back in. Oh yeah, and there was one more thing when Jon gets the scroll, and this is really me just like thinking way outside the box, but when he gets the scroll, we have a very unusual shot of the perspective of looking up through the scroll that he's reading about Arya and Bran being alive and the Night King marching towards Eastwatch. It's a very unusual shot. It's a shot that we really only ever get if somebody's looking down, typically on a prisoner or a body. And it just made me wonder, because the words he says at that stage was, "I thought Arya was dead." And it made me go, no, don't let that be a shot we're going to see when she actually is dead and he's looking down on her body. So that just instantly came into my mind. And yeah, and Davos saying, "I'm warning you, I'm not a fighter." And that's the third time he said that. He